Hello and welcome, fellow Spartans. So over the past couple of weeks, Creative Assembly have been revealing to us which factions are going to be playable for Total War Attila. CA have exhibited with these daily announcements a total of 10 factions which will be all available to owners of the game on release day. However, there is going to be an option of a further 3 factions which will become available and playable in the Viking Forefathers release day DLC and will be completely free if you do pre-order the game. The culture pack will also be available on launch day to purchase via Steam, so don't worry if you haven't pre-ordered Attila, they can still be obtained from day one, priced at about £5.99, €7.49 or about $7.99. So basically the same format as the Greek States DLC, which was available on Rome 2 come the day of launch. So I thought if you weren't aware of this news, that it would be a good idea to compile this together for you in order to give you guys a nice and neat overview of all the factions and news which has been unveiled. So get comfy and hopefully by the end of this video you'll have a better idea of what's coming in Total War Attila in 2015. Now speaking of dates, CA have only this week announced the latest title in the Total War series will be available globally on Tuesday the 17th of February 2015. So that's not that long to wait at all really, as I was thinking it would be released around September, a similar date to Rome 2. Now you're probably thinking understandably that this date is a bit soon and could result in an unpolished game at launch. However, as I've said previously, I did get to play it at EGX a couple of months ago when it was first announced, and the build that I played, which was an old alpha version, did seem fairly optimised in the Siege of Londinium battle which I fought. Now in that, which I'm sure you've already seen, a lot is happening on the screen at one given time. You've got artillery fire, thousands of men fighting on the battle screen, detailed buildings in the city, smoke and lighting effects, and even the new dynamic fire system which spreads fire across the city, causing a morale penalty to the defending army, and it's a nice little feature which is being brought back to Attila. And with all that, I didn't see much frame rate drops at all. It did keep pretty stable throughout the whole conflict. Now we all know that this was one of the bigger problems that Rome 2 had at launch, and I absolutely feel that this has been worked hard on to ensure this isn't repeated again basically. I'm sure you all agree that with the recent release of the Emperor edition of Rome 2, we can now experience a much more polished version of the game, one which we all wanted from the start obviously. The game is a lot more optimised than it was, and after 16 patches a number of the major bugs have been ironed out, and even though some of the features we all came to love in the Total War series were not included in Rome 2, it is still a much better game than it was over a year ago. And credit to CA, as they do seem to have listened to the community, as we can now see that some missing elements have made their way back into Attila, one being the family tree which caused such an outcry at its exclusion within Rome 2. Attila seems to have also streamlined a lot of the campaign screens to ensure all the information we need for any given aspect of the game is represented to us in a more sleeker and visual appealing format, seemingly taking a lot of influence from one of its predecessors, Shogun 2, which is an absolute classic Total War title, and a solid example of this being in the General Skills and Traits tab, which you can currently see on your screen right now. Essentially the point I'm trying to make is that Rome 2 is now given a much more solid platform with the Warscape engine in order to enhance it further with Attila than it would have done a year ago. So essentially with Rome 2 now being in a lot stronger and more optimised position means Attila can hopefully push the series further forward with a much smoother transition come release next year. Not to mention that they would have been probably working on his title no doubt in tandem with Rome 2, so that would aid the development immensely to be very solid and in depth hopefully. I see this launch to be very similar as Napoleon Total War was to Empire for example. As we know, Empire didn't have the smoothest of launches either, but when Napoleon was launched a year later, this gave us the Empire Total War that we all wanted from the beginning, and I wouldn't be surprised if that pattern didn't happen once more. Okay, so as promised, I will now give you an overview of all the factions announced by CA, showing you their starting positions on the map, as well as some basic facts about them in the game. So the main two superpower factions which were obviously going to be playable are the Western and Eastern Roman Empires. These two will undoubtedly provide the player with one of the biggest challenges on the game. Not only will they have to manage a large segments of the campaign map from the initial start, but have to face off a large number of potential enemies who will want to take chunks out of their already faltering empire. We saw the Western Roman Empire being showcased in the announcement session at EGX, and already at that point we could see their lands in Britannia being challenged by the invading Saxons from the north. As you probably already know, the Western and Eastern Roman Empire capitals will be Rome and Constantinople respectively. These factions will provide the player with some really hard strategic choices at the start, something very different to the scenarios we experienced in Rome 2. However, it isn't all doom and gloom for the Romans. As the various barbarian threats descend on Rome itself, the power centre of the empire had shifted over time towards Constantinople, which resulted in the development of more trade with the Near East and other fiscal reforms that allowed for armies to be recruited to face down invaders. And so if you were to play as the Eastern Roman Empire when the campaign starts, players will have a fairly secure position with a lot of potential for expansion, although they will have to deal with the Visigoth armies of Alaric, which are moving into Thracia and Macedonia. Next up is the Vandals, and these are former allies of the Roman Empire that were used as a Vetterati to battle other barbarians, and they have been settled to some extent, although all that changed once the Huns arrived and drove them out of Pannonia. Players who choose this faction will have to rely on raiding initially and abandon some of their old homes as they search for a new suitable location from which to project their power. These could be a kind of nomad faction without any real starting region at the beginning. Also, you can see in the picture that it seems that they have entered the Eternal City with what appears to be the Colosseum in the background. This could be representing the Vandals sacking Rome, which historically happened in the year 455 AD. The Visigoths also fought for Rome for a while and are threatened by the power of the Huns, but they are wronged by the Eastern Roman Empire, which is more stable and powerful from a military standpoint. They are located in Macedonia when Total War Attila starts, and players will have to carefully choose their targets as they seek to once again survive tough times and find a new place to live. Creative Assembly have stated, these are people accustomed to taking what the world offers. The Visigoths rarely go hungry and exact a heavy price on any factions they annex in tributary states. CA explained that both the Vandals and the Visigoths stand close to Roman lands at the beginning of the campaign and have different reasons for hating their more civilized neighbours. So if you like the idea of starting pretty much with nothing and controlling what destiny lies in store for them, then this could be the campaign for you. The Ostrogoths are at this point in history a shadow of their former selves, after having to face the power of the invading barbarian hordes, and they now live on the edges of the empire and pull off jobs as mercenaries. One of the developers at CA stated that the Ostrogoths' long-term relationship with Roman culture, civic and military matters lends them much credence to the point where they face little resistance from the local populace when occupying Roman territories. In such circumstances, they will also have access to Roman military assets to strengthen their numbers as well. The Ostrogoths were also responsible for an attack on Rome, sacking the city in 546 AD. The Franks are situated in the Lower Rhine region and are led by Pharamond, who is trying to choose between attacking Rome assets or trying to find new territory to expand to, while also respecting the alliances he has at the start of Total War Attila. The Confederation of Tribes will ultimately become one of the major powers in the Western Europe and will lead to the creation of modern France after centuries, but it is thought that players will have to carefully manoeuvre them in order to bypass their initial challenges, especially with being a one-region faction. The Franks are capable warriors, and in Total War Attila they will be able to grow in ferocity as more of them fall on the battlefield. The Sassanid Empire is a successor of sorts to both the Persians and the Parthians, and it has a solid, lean administration and formidable military forces that aim to occupy both the trade nodes of the Silk Road and provinces where the Romans can no longer rule. Creative Assembly explained that sanitation is important to this faction and that they tend to feature educated citizens who know how to balance their desire for expansion with diplomatic activity. The Alans, on the other hand, are far more aggressive, even if their preparation for extended campaigns might be limited. The faction starts off near the Black Sea and is reeling from a series of defeats delivered by the Huns, which have forced some of the members of the tribe to join their aggressors. The military fielded by the nation focuses on horsemen who are able to launch into devastating charges while also feigning retreats when the need arises. So the eastern heavy shot cavalry influence that was so evident in Rome 2 still remains in Attila for this faction. The Saxons have also been confirmed as a playable faction as well, and are ready to assault the western reaches of the Roman world. Again, we saw this faction showcased at EGX with them attacking the Empire's lands in Britannia. They are less threatened by the Huns and by other major nomadic tribes, and that should offer the players more freedom to develop their provinces in order to line up a solid military. CA stated on their website, "While the weather cools, the sun is rising for Saxon fortunes. Their choices for expansion are many, but whichever direction they choose to advance in, these born pillagers are not simple mindless destroyers and balance profit with destruction in their military conquests." So there you are, guys. They're the 9 playable factions announced to date, which will be available at the start of the game when Attila is released next year. So it certainly seems for some of the factions the experience aims to offer a contrasting flavour when compared to Rome 2, with destruction and looting more important than creating prosperous provinces and aiming for technological improvements. Disease and climate change will be an important factor on the strategic map, where settlements can be abandoned, and during the tactical battles, fear and fire will also play a larger role, especially when the Huns are on the offensive. And on that subject, we are still not certain if they will be announced as a playable faction down the line. Now, as I mentioned at the start, Total War Attila is set to get a first downloadable content pack as soon as it launches, called the Viking Forefathers Culture Pack, adding the Danes, the Jutes and the Gates as playable factions. These warlike Norse factions have their own unique land and naval units, missions, cultural and factual traits, and are poised to launch southwards from their icy homelands on campaigns of raiding, looting and conquest. In the bitter windswept north, hard winters breed hard men, and Norse warriors are redoubtable in combat on land and sea. To these natural seafarers and expert coastal raiders, the plentiful lands to the south promise glorious victories and great plunder. So again, keeping in that reoccurring theme of destruction and looting for a lot of these factions. So just to recap with this DLC, it will be completely free if you pre-order the game. However, you will be able to purchase it on launch day via the Steam if you so wish. Total War Attila is also going to be getting a special edition which is designed to include an official biography for Attila the Hun, linked to the most recent academic research, theories and renowned military history specialist Osprey Publishing. The tome is illustrated with maps and a number of specially commissioned pieces of artwork and photographs of archaeological sites linked to the Huns and their conquest spree. A reference guide poster for the game is also included, which shows the campaign map on one side and the factions with their unique nature on the other. The special edition of Total War Attila will also include the 3 playable factions from the Vikings Forefather Culture Pack. So that is it, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you enjoyed my overview video of the recent announcements for Total War Attila, along with all the faction reveals over the last couple of weeks. If there are any more details that are published by Creative Assembly, then I will be sure to cover them in an update video down the line. But I must admit, I am extremely excited about Attila and I can't wait to start my campaigns on the channel next February. I hope you guys are looking forward to it too. If you have enjoyed the video, please drop a like and share it with your friends, but please remember to comment, rate and subscribe. Hook me up on the usual Facebook, Twitter and my Steam group, the Heroes of Sparta. But until next time, this is WarriorofSparta for now, saying farewell.